Hey, it's Matt. Welcome to Bearable 73. So I'm finally back to Shogun. I know it's been about 2 weeks. I've been slowing down the videos. I, you know, like I said, in the last episode 8 review, I've been a little disappointed. But episode 9, man, it was it's probably my favorite episode of the season. Although I think the second or third one was kind of tied for it. So before we get into discussing the episode with the review and all that, I have two more links below to important information for context. Okay, and they're both about one is about Osaka Castle, the other is about the siege of Osaka Castle. Now, you may hear some background noise. There's some loud people outside. I don't think my mic's picking it up, but I could hear it. So if you hear a little disturbance, there's nothing I can do about that. That's apparently a 24-hour party going on. Anywho, I apologize for that. Anywho, uh, so I've been going on about Edo Castle, which is where Toranaga lives. Okay, and in real life, Tokugawa Ieyasu, of course, was his family's holding, which is the modern day Tokyo, and the immense fortification that was. Okay, well, in terms of Edo Castle is a fortified land almost, relatively speaking. Um, at the time, the most impregnable castle in Japan is Osaka Castle. That's why the Taiko made his headquarters there, and so forth. And that's also the hereditary holdings of the family and all that sort of thing, right? So the whole plan has been I may have been flip flopping Osaka and Edo in my mentions in those previous 8 episodes. Forgive me on that. Sometimes your brain, whatever. Um, but anyway, so Toranaga and knew he has to get them out of, or to get a sneak away into Osaka in order to win his military victory. Okay, that's kind of what the concept of Prison Sky was—a sort of surprise attack that overwhelms it. Okay, and in real life, what happened is a series of events where Lady Garcia, which is Mariko, the character she's based on, dying led to Ishido's forces having to come out of the castle, which led to Ieyasu's force defeating him, and then eventually the Taiko's son, who was still a young, I believe, which we've seen the boy in this castle, the boy in this villa, the Taiko. He remained in Osaka Castle and ruled it, and Shogun sort of ends it. Spoilers, by that time this is episode 10 already out. Okay, Shogun ends with Toranaga winning. Okay, becoming Shogun or about to become Shogun. It does not cover the next period of history where Tokugawa Ieyasu consolidated power. Okay, and so that's why I have the Siege of Osaka Castle article there, which is when Tokugawa Ieyasu pretty brutally consolidated powers throughout Japan and ending in Osaka Castle and the eventual execution of his hands of essentially the whole family of the Taiko. Um, it should be understood that this boy, the Taiko, the heir, marries one of Toranaga's granddaughters, and has essentially his son, the Taiko's son's heir, so to speak, and the Taiko did not want any political. He wanted his rulers. He did not want to be the shogun or the ruler of Japan, unlike his father, who had unified Japan. So there's a combo. I'm not going to go over the whole thing. Just if you're curious about what happened after Shogun, after the historical events fictionalizing Shogun, read the Siege of Osaka Castle article. Okay, down below. What else? So we're at a crux of a point where Mariko has led a delegation to Osaka Castle to escort the guests home and so forth, and that pushes a political pushes politics into a point of no return. Okay, and that's what the gist of this episode is. Let's get into it. By the way, it is an extremely well done episode. Um, the flaws. Okay, so I've been hinting about this while the one I don't understand. This is an adaptation criticism. Okay, there is a point when Blackthorn attempts to commit seppuku legitimately, and that's when he mentally commits to being Japanese. Okay, and had they included that, what he does here by agreeing to the second Mariko would have made even more sense. In other words, he recognized the sort of the Japanese way of doing things, and recognized the conundrum that Mariko is in, that she's willing to essentially sacrifice her eternal soul, because she's Catholic, but she has a duty to Japan, to Toranaga, and Blackthorn, being Japanese, helps her resolve her personal crisis with her duty by agreeing to second her and kill her before. That would have worked out better here. Okay, as I recall, that did not happen in the novel. By the way, Blackthorn did not second her. It was Ishido himself who stopped her and gave in. And anyway, regardless of the adaptation, the episode was great. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's get through what came before. So this is basically, Mariko, the end of the episode 8, saying she's ready to do her part. This is a flashback to young Lady Ochiba and young Mariko. Again, this is when Mariko essentially adopts Catholicism after the end of her family. However, I believe the real life Lady Garcia adopted Catholicism well before the issue with her father becoming a traitor. Okay, and it wasn't this particular priest who, they're making the connection with, I believe it's Father Martin, a personal connection, and that wasn't the case, so to speak. But okay, fine, whatever, it works. How clinging to it, how adopting a faith and all that. I'm not complaining with the depiction of it. It works for the show. And so this is Blackthorn commenting how the Japanese are getting screwed over by the Portuguese. Now here we see finally. Remember I mentioned that Yabushige is or Yabu as I call him from the original. He's a very conniving individual. He can't see how he thinks Toranaga is the smarter guy, but he can't see how Toranaga is going to come out of this, and so you'll see in this episode he basically fully commits to going over to Ishida. Okay, and so that's essentially his own fate decided, as it were, right? And how do I put it? If that's the nature of his character. That's why he's my favorite character. He didn't choose. He made the bad choice at the end, but it's in his character's nature. He's a conniving scumbag and who's self-interested, and in a sense, because he didn't follow his own society's rules of loyalty, who to his proper feudal lord, Lord Toranaga, he lost out in the end. So that's kind of why the character is complex and interesting, right? And you'll see him trying to use Blackthorn as a bargaining chip, because they still have Blackthorn being speaking passable Japanese at best, whereas by this time he was almost fairly fully fluent, and he had wizened on to Yabu's shenanigans. Okay, so this thing where Yabu is essentially saying he owns the Anjin-san, and using ignorance of the language difficulties to not convey that. That's something that Blackthorn in the book and the original would have known. And that's another thing that happens. See, the scene that's missing is that Yabu that stopped him from committing seppuku, who Blackthorn, and at that point Yabu recognized that Blackthorn had committed himself mentally to the Japanese way, and that's when the two cemented this sort of weird friendship of respect. Like Blackthorn gained respect for Yabu by watching him in action, by being a decisive man, and Blackthorn recognized that he's a sort of European style scoundrel, and Blackthorn himself, he's not a paladin. He's just a bit of a scoundrel. He's, that's the type of life he's leading as far as being on the sea, as a privateer, because he's a private. He's not. So that's kind of why the characters sort of bond a little bit, um, and they made the relationship more one sided here, which I'm a little disappointed in. Okay. So they the walls of Osaka Castle. They don't show the moats. The moats are one of the most famous fortifications of Osaka Castle, and they don't show you. In the original, they do show the moats, passing over the moats. So that situation where everyone, all these people are hostages to Ishido, um, even though it's not publicly admitted they're hostages, they are de facto hostages. And that is what Mariko is there to do, is to force the issue where Shido has to either declare them hostages and not release them, which will tick off. Well, you'll see they do finally explain in the episode that that which they should have explained before. I think they did the reveal of what happens, where everyone knows. So this. I know I'm skipping around, guys. I If they're not going to have the Catholics, the Jesuits, as involved as they were in the book, they really some of the scenes here become extra and unnecessary. They're just like an afterthought pervading the background part of the story, as opposed to they're downplaying the Catholic Japanese daimyo's motivations here, which was a big scenario that comes up in the eventual consolidation of power of Tokugawa Ieyasu. Okay, so and the reason Clavel highlighted the Catholic daimyo issues in his novel was because, and this is a legitimate criticism of the show, not so much the episode. The episode could have just cut the scene out. It's still my favorite episode, but of this adaptation is that he put it in for a reason, because he was trying to convey what was going on in Japan at the time. In other words, it wasn't just the arrival of a Westerner with some new ideas and access to a different source of European goods. It was the changes in consolidation of power that Tokugawa Ieyasu was undergoing after his master, the Taiko, had finally ended the 100 years of war, of civil warfare. The changes with the growing Catholic and minority in Japan, and the persecutions and all that. It's a very complicated time, and Clavel included that stuff in his master novel for a reason. And I get you can't have everything in 10 episodes, but I would have liked to have seen either them just not included at all, because they're not servicing the story on that. They're telling you exists, but just dropping bits and not really using it as part of the plot line. The whole religious strife going on. That is what I'm getting at. So this is basically, Yabu dressing up Blackthorn like a prized cow, so to speak. That scene's really done well. Now this scene, okay. So here's another criticism. You guys want me to criticize? I'm going to give some criticisms, okay? This scene makes sense if Blackthorn is fluent in Japanese, okay? He can have this discussion with one of the Christian daimyos, and it makes sense, okay? But in the same episode, they said that he tells other people who speak at the same level this guy is, don't use complicated words or whatever. Like, I don't want to say that they're undercutting the Blackthorn character for reasons in this. So there's very little woke in here, and I don't think Saneda, who was one of the producers, would have let them blatantly destroy this character who is historically significant and respected in Japanese culture, of William Adams, and the fact that this character and the character of Blackthorn, I don't think Saneda will let them do that. So I think this is just a little touch of maybe some bad writing leaking in with the inconsistencies in depiction of Blackthorn. Okay. So this is the audience, and I like the way they lay this out with the particular the candlelight. It's a beautiful looking scene. So Ishido's public gambit has failed. So now on to what Mariko is there for, which, and so now there's appeals to Mariko. See, this is one of the masterworks of the novel, and you see it in different ways in both adaptations. Okay, is the it isn't just about a war or whatever. It's because to quote Clausewitz, war is the continuation of politics by military means. This is the politicking of trying to get Toranaga's supporters away from him. Okay, like for instance, if Mariko goes over to his side, then Toranaga's position gets dramatically weaker. So that's what Lady Ochiba is trying to do for Ishido, is to get Mariko to come to their side, to say to her, so that's the political play here. And this is Mariko doing her duty and pushing it. And now this is where, even though Blackthorn had long since committed to the Japanese way, he will be ignorant of what's going on here. Whereas the innate Japanese know, she's forcing an issue. Okay, an issue that Ishido does not want to deal with. Okay. And the rest of the episode is basically about that and the ramifications of it. This whole sequence is well done. I know some people will criticize some aspects of it. I'm okay with it. And it is not historically accurate in any way, because obviously Lady Gracia's character arc in real life is different than Mariko's in the book. I think they did. I think they went with the more fuller confrontation than the original adaptation, and even the way the book does it to an extent, because of they wanted to try to convey to the audience why everyone considers it so serious, like using the weight of the deaths to consider it that way. And again, by the way, if you're wondering why the way this scene is being done, female samurai would have learned the naginata for defensive purposes, not to fight male samurai in open combat. They have no chance against that. The physiological limitations of the woman are inherent to that. Okay, and that's why these guys are using spears, by the way, not their swords. They're not. They know if any one of them kills her, their whole family is going to be executed. She way outranks them. Their orders are she cannot be harmed. Okay, they're trying to get her to deliberately refuse to retreat, and she has one final card to play because they're going to make her lose face, basically. Okay, so that there should have been some, as a scene critical, you should have someone explaining. And this is why Blackthorn, knowing more Japanese, could have said to you, "What's going on here? Why did they just kill her?" And you said, though you thought they could have had used Blackthorn learning the ways of Japan, say there are orders not to kill her. She's a person that you're not allowed to kill her, even in an act of self-defense. Okay, they're trying to make her deliberately surrender and say and abstain. And then you get Mariko, of course, says she's going to commit seppuku because she can't. She's been dishonored and all that. And then the political officer of the daimyo, Christian daimyo, agreed to be her second because of her to protect her faith. And this is them explaining that if Mariko commits seppuku, there'll be this huge revolt. Okay, and if I were to leave, so Ishido's being a rock in a hard place, and that in real life is kind of what Ishida, what Lady Gracia, what she accomplished in her role is getting Ishida into that rock and hard place, and he had to essentially, and that led to his forces having to come, ultimately her death, led to his forces having to come out of Osaka Castle, which allowed Tokugawa to defeat them. Okay. And the rest of this is just padding, not padding, but every character getting their mental stuff, in order. Then we have the seppuku ceremony. She's about to do it, and then Ishido brings the permits because he knows she's won the victory. And then we have Yabu, this Yabu finally goes and picks a side, lets the shinobi in, and the whole assassination plot occurs. Again, this is probably my second, one of my tied for my favorite episodes. It's either my favorite or tied for my favorite episode of the whole series. Okay, so now there's not a lot more to say about this. Just to understand, for those of you who are watching along with me, if you're watching episode in my review, I'll preface you by saying this: episode 10 does not resolve all the plot lines inherent in the book. Okay, it's important to note that was Clavel was not rewriting the history of Japan. Like, he wouldn't write a history of the entire period of 40 years of Tokugawa Geisha doing stuff. Okay, he was making a historical fiction version to hit this knot of history that was very interesting, which expresses Japanese culture with the outsider coming in and all that. So, bear in mind. So I will find out later this evening. Does he nail it? Does this modern adaptation nail it and be even? It is not as good an adaptation as the first one. Already, the first one is the second adaptation of anything all time to me. But this is still, it's going to be like a 7 out of 10 on the adaptation scale, whereas 10 out of 10 is the Salem's Lot adaptation in the original 70s one, and 0 out of 10 would be like oh God, I can't even think of how bad you have to be a 0. This is like a 6 or 7 as an adaptation, but as its own unique product, it's a 9 so far. Anyway, my name is Matt. This is my Unbearable 73 reviewing Shogun 2024 episode 9. Have a great weekend.